I'm going to invite Xi Xiao. Please correct me on your pronunciation of your name. And you're going to talk about how language assessment literacy could help to achieve better teaching and learning. A very interesting topic. Over to you. You have, each one of us has 15 minutes for presentation, followed by 5 minutes of question and answers. Thank you so much. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Can you see my screen now?
Sure, we can.
Okay, great. First of all, I want to thank the conference committee for giving me this chance. And today, I'm going to talk about how language assessment literacy could help to achieve better teaching and learning. At the very beginning, I want to acknowledge my thanks to Professor Wahid. He's my supervisor, and he introduced me into the field of language assessment literacy. In this talk, I will talk about the 4 areas: language assessment literacy, assessment for learning, development and validation of the MLAL index, and its potential values. So first of all, I want to share with you the definition of language assessment literacy. The first definition comes from Imbalari. Language assessment literacy means having the capacity to ask and answer critical questions about the purpose for assessment, about the fitness of the tool being used, about testing conditions, and about what is going to happen on the basis of the result. So I would like to ask you as a teacher, when you design an assessment, what is the purpose of your assessment? Is that to give a score to your students or to motivate them to learn better? And the second definition comes from Faucher. Maybe this one is more detailed. You can see language assessment literacy means the knowledge, skills, and abilities required to design, develop, maintain, or evaluate large-scale standardized and/or classroom-based tests. So today's talk is mainly about classroom-based tests. And based on that, we were going to look at the previous research from Taylor. This fundamental research just paved the ways for the future research. As Linda indicated, she found different LAL profiles for 4 different stakeholders. Like A means the test writers, B means classroom teachers, C means university administrators, and D means for language testers. You can see for different stakeholders, they have different requirements for the language assessment literacy. Based on this research, Cramo and Luke Harding in 2020 published another research. They further developed Taylor's 8 domains into 9 domains, and they adopted the data-driven factor structures. To show you that, they investigated like 198 test assessment developers, 138 assessment researchers, and 645 language teachers. So they find out the 9 profiles of language assessment literacy. Okay, you can see the washback and preparation, scoring and rating, developing and administrating language assessments, and so on. So for the second part, I want to talk about assessment for learning. This is the purpose of our assessment. Assessment for learning is a process of seeking and interpreting evidence for use by learners and their teachers to decide where their learners are in their learning, where they need to go and how best to get there. And you can also see the 10 principles proposed by the Assessment Reform Group in 1999. Assessment for learning should be part of effective planning of teaching and learning. And it also should be regarded as a key professional skill for teachers. I'm not going to read all of them. And you can also see assessment should take account of the importance of learner motivation. Learners should receive constructive guidance about how to improve. Based on the previous research and this foundation, Dr. Wahid's team developed the Malaysian Language Assessment Literacy Index, which consists of 9 domains, 57 items with a nominal, ordinal, 6-point scales. The MLAL index was validated by 4 international and 4 local Malaysian language assessment experts through Delphi methods and 3 rounds of field tests on 64, 91, and 89 English language teachers in Malaysia. Let's have a look. The process of development and validation of MLAL. So you can see the flowchart here. Okay, when we talk about the potential values of it, I want to go back to Crammell and Luke Harding's 9 profiles, especially the 4 factors of LAL proposed by them. The first one is assessment in language pedagogy. The second one is assessment principles and interpretation. The third one is language structure, use, and development. And the last one is washback and preparation. I want to compare the delicacy of these 2 different instruments. Okay, you can see the left part is the MLAL and the right part is LAL survey conducted by Crammell and Harding. Okay, so basically you can see this one I want to emphasize is how to give useful feedback on the basis of an assessment. In the instrument of MLAL, we further elaborated into the 3 items, like I can analyze my pupils' reactions and feedback on my assessments. I can use my colleagues' feedback to improve my assessment, as well as I know how to conduct one-on-one sessions with my pupils to interview and give feedback on their performance. So you can see the feedback is not only between the teacher and students, but also between like different stakeholders or with their colleagues. Okay, let's move on to the second one. The second one is the comparison in terms of assessment principles and interpretation. The item in LAL survey shows how to use assessment to evaluate achievement in language learning. We further elaborated into I can understand summative assessment, and I understand the importance of formative assessments. I can develop and use performance assessments like poster presentation, role playing. I can develop and use informal assessments like class quizzes, portfolios. I know how to assess my pupils' work on project-based assignments, both individually and in groups. If you attended like yesterday's webinar of Dr. Wahid, you will see his personal example of how to motivate the students to make videos in a writing class. And we also use the portfolios as another instrument. Further on, we will talk about how to interpret what a particular, sorry, I cannot see this, I need to move it, sorry. How to interpret what a particular score says about an individual's language ability. We need to compare the scores with other assessment scores of the same pupil, and we also need to compare the assessment scores with external assessment scores such as IELTS scores and MUT scores in Malaysia. Let's talk about the third category, is comparison in terms of language structure, use, and development. How language, foreign language, second language are learned. We talk about it into like, I am aware of second language acquisition theories. I am aware of learning theories such as behaviorism and related theories. I'm also aware of different second language teaching and learning methods such as grammar, translation, audiolingua. And how language is used in society. We want to talk about this topic from the systemic functional linguistic perspective. That is how I can design my assessments to focus on language proficiency in real life interactive situations. And I can design my assessment to focus on communicative abilities that are appropriate according to the context of conversation, like medium of conversation, relationship between speakers, and specific occasions. Lastly, I want to compare the washback and preparation. The most important thing of assessment for learning is we just constantly give feedback and feed forward between the teacher and students. So how assessment can influence teaching and learning in the classroom? We just talk about it in the following items, like I can use my pupils' assessment results to improve the way I teach. As a teacher, I plan lessons based on the specific learning standards that would be covered in assessment. In my teaching plans, I keep in mind that learners can also be assessed through classroom activities. I believe that in the next lesson, my revision of the earlier lesson is a part of my assessment. As I mentioned, Dr. Wahid is a developer, but also he also used the series in his class. Like each of his class, he would ask the students, what did we learn from the previous class? So it can also be regarded as a kind of assessment.
Last 1 minute.
Yes, thank you. And let's go back to the conclusion. The MLL equips the frontline teachers with better knowledge and confidence to cultivate a classroom or design assessment for learning. And as a useful measurement tool, we believe that MLAL index could further enable researchers and policymakers to measure pre- and in-service teachers' literacy, to develop and administer valid and reliable school-based assessment.
Thank you so much.
This is my reference. Thank you.
Excellent presentation, very interesting material out there. Really makes us think about our assessments. Excellent work. The floor is open for questions. And if there are no questions, I just have this 2 questions. Fascinating work out there. I was just wondering, my question is how translatable are these, this language for assessment is, and how do you, for instance, if you are sort of like engaged in language pedagogy of the first language pedagogy, for instance, or even if it is second language, we are talking about English as a second language. So how do we sort of use the same constructs and ensure that how they are understood in different contexts is not different? We are all on the same page. Also, I'm talking about the connotations of the words or constructs used. And the other question linked to it again is that you talk about assessment for learning. And I do understand there are terms used as assessment is not my field, but there's these terms used as assessment as learning. And within your presentation, you also switched to assessment in language pedagogy. Do you see any differences in this? Over to you. I think it's a connection issue. Can you hear us? I think there's a connection issue. All right. So, Dr. Wahid,